Okay. All right. So I want to welcome everybody who come on to both Zoom and Facebook, and we have a very wonderful devotee with us today that will be doing the interview, Gaurangi Priya. She's a lovely second generation devotee. So that'll be I don't think we've had any interviews with second generation devotees yet, have we? Maybe. I'm not thinking right now.
I don't think so.
You might be the first. So there is a distinguishing characteristic right from the start. So I'm going to start by reading your bio, and then we can start with your questions for you. Okay, so Gaurangi Priya was born as Panchatattva Dasi, and I remember her as Panchatattva Dasi, into a Vaishnava family. Her parents are both disciples of Srila Prabhupada, and she spent her childhood in boarding school ashrams, surrounded by a deep immersion in the culture of bhakti. And she married young, at the age of 18, to Madan Gopal, and we've all had an interview with him. And they had a beautiful ceremony in the ISKCON Denver temple. They moved to Hillsborough, Chapel Hill area in 2003, where they still live with their 3 children, Gandharvika, Venu Gopal, and Pranaya Kaylee. And she met Guru Maharaj in 2004 and knew in her heart from the very first meeting with him that she had found her home knowing guide. It took longer for her head to catch up with her heart. And she did receive both mantra and diksha initiations on Janava Thakurani's appearance day in May of 2006 at the first initiation Guru Maharaj gave in North Carolina. And I was fortunate enough to be there for that. She loves bringing community together. She's invested in creating happy Krishna memories for generations of children. And she's committed to practicing bhakti yoga with like-minded association. She's the director of the Prem Natya Vidyalaya. It's a dance school dedicated to teaching the ancient devotional art of Bharatanatyam, and runs arts and Indian summer camps that fill to capacity every year since 2008. She has taught her Arts of India classes as clubs at local private and charter schools for many years, and is affectionately known in the area as Miss Priya. She's also a registered nurse, and she worked for a year as in a pediatric clinic. She's currently taking some time off of nursing to assist her eldest daughter in moving to college, as well as focusing on self-care, sadhana, her health, and her family. In her spare time, she can find, yeah, I was going to say in the spare, I don't know what spare time do you have? She loves to garden, attend hot yoga classes, go on hikes, visit friends, write, bake, and craft. So that's a really nice little intro for us. So Gaurangi Priya, we're going to start off our interview again, just reminding everyone we're looking at the Sadhaka's journey, and looking also, comparing it to Joseph Campbell's hero's journey, and really seeing how all the things that we go through, the messiness in our journey, how it's there to really bring out the best in us and to purify out the things in our heart that are getting in the way of really developing our spiritual qualities. So just continuing in that line of thinking, we'll start with asking the question, Gaurangi, growing up, I mean, you were born into a Vaishnava family, so that was a pretty good clue that you were on a spiritual path. But anything that stood out for you personally, because I mean, I know a lot of children, including my own, that grew up as Vaishnavas, but it was there were things that happened in their life that really got them to be committed to the path. So I'm wondering if you want to share anything like that growing up.
Okay. So let's see. I guess we can kind of get to that. I do think that I always say that people that are born into a spiritual tradition, they do have to come to a point where they choose it for themselves. And that is always kind of an important part of their journey. So I was born in the Los Angeles temple, New Dwarka, and my mother always used to say that Agni Dev induced her labor because he led a really amazing Gora Artik the night before I was born, and she woke up in the middle of the night in labor. I think, yeah, so just I was okay, sorry, I'm feeling a little nervous.
That's okay. That's part of what you should be feeling.
So yeah, I kind of want to convey, as the title of the series is The Beauty and the Messiness. So, I feel like there was so much beauty, being surrounded by just, Krishna from the very beginning of my life. And I was born on the Ekadasi in between Advaita Acharya's appearance day and Nityananda's appearance day. It's like a Ekadasi in between that week or two. And so that was one of the reasons my mother named me Panchatattva. And it was kind of the season for the Panchatattva. And she also says that she took her 2 weeks to name me. And she said they used to read after the morning program. They would read a few verses of the Chaitanya Charitamrita. And so they read the verse that says, if you worship Panchatattva, easy things or difficult things become easy. And if you don't worship them, then easy things become difficult. So she said, I need all the help I can get. So I'm going to name her Panchatattva because, she wanted to make a difficult thing easier. So
Did it work for her?
I'm sure they helped. Yeah, I'm sure they helped. So and so my childhood was a mix of really deep immersion in bhakti, and as well as so I was born in 1979, and so just shortly after, I was conceived about 6 months after Prabhupada passed away. And so I grew up, and I want to touch a little bit on this just because later on it will kind of be important. So I grew up with a very strong connection with Srila Prabhupada. And, I feel like I said, I kind of came into being just shortly after. And so there was a very strong sense of separation from him. You know, I remember Vyas pujas that would go on for like 8 hours with, you know, grown men just crying and crying, and, you know, just a very, very palpable loss. So, yeah, that was definitely like a huge, you know, foundation. Like Srila Prabhupada, my parents are his disciples, and so he was really like my first connection to a guru. And, you know, I grew up saying his pranam mantras, and you know, and having real you know, spiritual experiences and connections. And I you know, I went to the morning program every day starting at 10 days. My mother always, she took off the obligatory 10 days off that was required, but then I attended Mangal Artik every day. And I had, you know, really sweet relationships with the deities in places that I lived. There was a lot of attraction to deity worship. And I attended Gurukulas for my entire education. So I graduated in high school from a Gurukula. So I never attended any kind of secular schools. So I learned shlokas and visited India, which was very powerful for me. I went a few times when I was a baby, and then younger child, and then also when I was 12, which was really powerful. And I had a really strong commitment to spiritual life. I took a vow when I was 9 to chant a set number of rounds. And excuse me. And I increased every year until I was, I believe, 16, when I was chanting 16 rounds. And I, you know, I lived a very extremely pure lifestyle. You know, people, if they hear that I grew up in the 80s, you know, I have no reference of 80s lifestyle whatsoever. No, none at all. So, you know, it was a very sheltered, pure lifestyle. And so that was the real beauty. And I've really appreciated that a lot in life now, and just kind of that foundation of being able to really identify as a Vaishnav was very strong for me. And you know, and of course it was also the 80s were a hard time in ISKCON. And I know when some of the first interviews you did were with some of the first generation older ladies. And so you know, I had that from a child's perspective, and kind of there wasn't any role models of how to raise children or how to have a family. And I think it was really, really tough to be in a society that glorified renunciation so much, and but then have children which naturally bring out affection and love, and you have to take care of. And so, you know, it was a real dichotomy. And I did live away from home from the time I was 5 until I was 13. And when I was 13, I just said, I'm not doing this anymore. I told my parents I can't do this anymore. So it was really hard for me.
What was the hardest part, Gaurangi, of living, you know, away from your parents?
Um, so I think I like, sorry.
It's okay. Yeah, that's the messiness of.
Yeah. I was gonna give a disclaimer that I cry really easily, and I was like,
Yeah, okay, the
that
disclaimer.
was
Yeah,
one of the hardest parts of the interview. It's gonna be, I'm gonna try really hard. Okay, I have a very open-hearted chakra. I was gonna say, it all comes out anyway. So yeah, all of all the difficult things that I experienced in my childhood, and there were multiple things. Yeah, I think living away from home was what kind of impacted me the most. Just that difficulty and homesickness and things like that. And, and especially because I was very lucky to have very loving parents. And, they had just been convinced by, that other people would do a better job of raising me than them. So, that, that was a good thing, because I always, I did have them to return to, and on breaks I would go home, and I was extremely attached to my father. And he okay, I quickly move through. Yeah, he still is, and he was at the time. He never hesitated. He never hesitated in expressing love and affection. And so I think that gave me a lot of sense of security, but then it was hard to have to leave that. So through all the difficulties there, anybody that knows Gurukulis, I mean, there was an epidemic of physical and sexual and emotional abuse. So I didn't escape that, but I never, I had someone actually recently, a Gurukuli friend, ask me, did you ever, not want to be a devotee? Because she said, even me, I had a time where I had to kind of pull away, and I thought about it, and, I never did. I never felt at all that, I'm trying to think of the best way. Yeah, it wasn't like a connection to me that this is bad, and so this spiritual path is bad. So I even remember one time I used to love listening to kirtans. Agni Dev was a huge part of our home growing up, his cassette tapes. And there was this great cassette with Jai Sachinandan. I think it was called, I can't remember the name of it. Anyway, he was a devotee, Jai Sachinandan, and I used to just love listening to that. And somehow it came up. I asked my mother, like, who is this? And, she told me his name, and then she said that he wasn't a devotee anymore. I was about like 8 or 9. I can clearly remember like being like just this wave of sadness coming over me. And I was, oh God, sorry.
It's
Okay.
real. It's the feelings are there.
And I'm being recorded and I'm on a video. Okay. Okay.
Okay, it's you're role modeling how to be able to talk about sad things, and be able
Okay.
to have some tears. It's fine. I think it's
Okay.
a really
Okay.
good role
Thank
model.
you.
Totally fine.
Okay.
Mm.
Let me drink some water.
Water's good.
Okay. So yeah, just being like shocked that anyone wouldn't want to be a devotee.
Yeah.
So yeah, I had, so getting back to your question, when I was a teenager, we moved to the Denver temple, and I always like to say that is kind of where I became a devotee. In one sense of the term. My messiness extends for a long time. I was trying to think of how to really focus this interview, because it can get hard to focus. And so I think that was important to me, to kind of focus on the beauty and messiness in the different stages of my life. So when I was a teenager, we moved to the Denver temple, and it was a really powerful move for me. First of all, I kind of moved away from a lot of the dysfunction. I lived with a really dysfunctional family when I was young, and I was always around them. And so it was a move that I didn't know anybody there. We didn't know anybody. And it was a new space, and I really blossomed there. We moved there when I was 15. And I had my parents, they had temple housing. So we lived right across the street from the temple. And I had active service. I used to make garlands. I took care of Tulsi. I, would cook offerings. I started going on Harinam regularly. And it was a really strong samskar for me. I kind of think it was like my ashram days, even though I was still living at home with my parents. But it was a really beautiful time. And I also started doing book distribution. My mother is a very stalwart book distributor. She still goes to this day. And so I started book distribution, and I had some really powerful experiences. Again, that connection with Prabhupada was very strong. One summer that we traveled with the Grateful Dead concerts, and we distributed books in parking lots before the concert. And I was at the time probably 16, 17 years old. And just really powerful experiences. I remember one day I distributed 50 hardback books. Wow. And it was just amazing, like connections with with Srila Prabhupada and just Lord Chaitanya, and then of course the other devotees there. And so I really feel like I chose my spiritual path there. And that was also when I started really searching for a guru. And I kind of want to emphasize that I was kind of like a model devotee. Like I never had the urge to try things outside of the path of bhakti. I never had a desire or a need. I think because I lived away from home for so long, by the time I was 13, I was so happy to be living home that I never had like a rebellious stage. I was just happy to be living with my parents. So, and that has its goods and bads, of course. You actually have to go through that. It's developmentally healthy. Anyway, that's not for this time. But we also had, and that was a very pivotal point, was that the temple president at the time had invited Kormarupa Prabhu he started coming in 1995 to the Denver temple, and no one had ever heard of Kormarupa Prabhu. He was a very simple sadhu that had lived in Vrindavan for decades. And, this temple president kind of brought him out and invited him to come give seminars at the Denver temple. So he made a huge impact on me. And he was my first, real living guru. I actually asked him for initiation, and I felt, very connected to him, and he helped me so much. And he spoke in a very like a different way than kind of the normal, maybe not normal, but just he had a nuanced way of presenting the philosophy. And also he was very liked to go deep with the philosophy in a very special way. And so and he didn't initiate, though. He wasn't initiating he never actually initiated disciples, even though he did have people that asked him, including me. And going back to your question, I am trying to stay on track with that. I think one thing that was kind of eventually my spiritual path, of course, led me to Guru Maharaj. And so when I think of your question, what are some things that maybe showed you early on, that I think there was inklings to being a little bit of a different thinker, for me, because authenticity and personalism were very, very important to me. And when I was 14, when we were still living in Hillsborough, before we moved to Denver, we had a car accident, and my mother was trying really hard to get people to drive me and my brother to school. And it was this struggle just trying to get people to come pick us up. And we had a neighbor who was like a Christian lady, and she came over one evening and she just wanted to check in on us. I think she had seen that we didn't have a car. Anyway, she was very friendly and personal, and it started this like quest for me, because I noticed in my life that so many of the devotees who were like quote unquote strict tended to be hard-hearted, and they didn't have like a sense of compassion and real authentic relationships. And and then I would see the devotees who were maybe considered congregational members, who you would see more during festivals or whatever. They seemed more authentic to me. And so it was this real kind of struggle to understand, why are those that are practicing according to the rules and everything, why are they not developing a soft heart? And I remember I wrote Satsvarup Maharaj at the time. I would ask people this question as a teenager. So this guru, I knew that I needed a guru. It was a very, like I said, I was the model. I did everything. I was chanting 16 rounds. I was going to the morning program. I was a temple devotee. And so it was kind of the next step for me, like that's the next thing that I needed to do. And so it was a very kind of like check off the list thing for me. And, before I met Kormarupa, I don't think maybe I realized it at the time, but, I grew up also, even though I was a child, it was still very impactful seeing so many of these gurus leave. I personally had met like all of these Rameshwar, Bhavananda, Bhagavan, Harikesh. Like I offered them flowers and gotten cookies and the whole thing, like it was. And so it was a very strange thing in the mid to late 80s where it was this constant gurus leaving and falling down. And even later into the 90s, I remember I was attracted to Jagadish Maharaj, and then he also fell away. And so, yeah, there was definitely a little hesitancy, I should say, a little bit of, well, how do I know, this isn't gonna happen to my guru? And some of the things that I think helped me be a little bit thoughtful about this was, first of all, the way my parents kind of dealt with the craziness of the 80s is they started preaching centers away from the big temples. And so they were pretty autonomous. They had a preaching center in Ann Arbor, Michigan, and then Lansing. I grew up mostly in Michigan as a child. And they had a really beautiful preaching centers. My parents are very personal, and my father really likes to take care of people. And, we made really beautiful connections with local people, and we had really nice festivals. And the Gauratai deities that we are worshiping now, they were worshipped as in the preaching centers that my parents had. So that, it was a little bit of that separateness that showing me, that you can find Krishna and you can flourish and you can even preach outside of the temple itself. So that was a big, that was kind of a important, even though I did live away, I would come home on the summers and I was, part of that preaching center experience. And so, and it was definitely some of, the happiest times was, those experiences with preaching to people and having our own festivals. We would do plays and all kinds of really sweet experiences. And so, I needed a guru. That was kind of the next thing that I needed, that and a husband, because I was groomed to get married. That was pretty much all I was groomed for. And the funny thing is, I always say that to people, and not in a terrible way, but it's just the facts. But recently, somebody, Keshava, this boy that I grew up with, he put on my Facebook page a picture of an article that had been done, and he was staying with us because his parents were in India. And so he was part of the article, and someone had come in to do an article on like a Krishna family. And so my family was the family. And I don't think I'd ever read this, but in the very first sentence, it introduces me, and it says, Pancha, who's, 8 years old, will be married by the time she's 16, and goes on to list how my life will be. And I was like, wow, I really was. So yes, it was an important.
So they changed your name in the article.
No, Pancha.
Pancha. I thought you said Concha. Yeah. Okay.
No, Pancha. No, it was my name. Anyway, that's just a little interesting side note. So I needed a guru and a husband. But and another thing that was important to me, and a lot of my friends, they were waiting to find a guru until they got married so that they could just get initiated by the same guru as their husband. And for me, I was always, a little unique, and I thought, no way, like my guru has to be my choice. I'm not going to just pick one that my husband has. So anyway, I would go to festivals and I would go to classes and I would listen to gurus. I was like on a quest. I'm going to find my guru. And when Kormarupa, when I met him, he that filled that need for me. but he said, I don't initiate, so I'll help you. But, and he recommended some people, like, he said, these are people that I feel like have integrity. And so it was a very head decision. So I kind of, so then I want to move forward a little bit to, so then I did get married. I got engaged when I was 17 and married a year later when I was 18. And, it could have been a not very good situation. I still feel that I did get married a little too young, but it really worked out well. I got really lucky. Mudden and I kind of really grew up together because he was also young. And in that sense, we, were able to experience a lot of sweetness, just kind of growing up spiritually as well as just growing together. And so he really was like when I found in him a really good friend when we first got together. And that was really important to me, to have someone that I could be authentic with, be real with. And, we were really best friends, and we got to travel for the first 4 years. We we opened our own preaching center in Boulder, Colorado. We got to go to India and spend about 3 months there. And we also bought a little camper and kind of traveled around America a little bit. So it was, during this time, my my connection was definitely with Kormarupa Prabhu. And then also this Mudden was going through his own turmoil with the ISKCON management at this time. And I was feeling a little bit unsettled with kind of where I belonged, because belonging was also something that was really important to me. Like Amal Sham said, how he was in his interview last week, how he was always kind of looking for the perfect community. So I moved a lot as a child. By the time I got married at 18, I had lived in 21 houses in 5 different states of America. So we moved quite a bit. And I was always kind of wanting to find like my community and my group. And so so Kormarupa Prabhu was very spiritually grounding. And when we visited India in 1998, and he gave us a lot of personal association. And it was at that time that Kundali Prabhu was also giving seminars. And so even by 1998, we were a little bit veering off the traditional path of, it was Kartik and Vrindavan, and we were going to this little house down the road for evening classes with Kundali Prabhu with a small group of like 10 people. And at the Krishna Balaram Mandir, there were, big festivals. So there was, kind of a little bit of questioning, but I felt secure in my spiritual path. I felt secure with having, Mudden, Gopal, and then also Kormarupa Prabhu. So it was kind of an even stage of my life, I guess. Yeah, in that sense. Okay, I feel like I need a little focus here. So what should I guess.
Yeah, so okay, so let's just kind of maybe recap where you've gotten to. And so you've grown up and in the movement, but as you as you got older and as you were thinking for yourself and then you got married, you really started to have a search for something maybe even outside of the institution that you grew up in. And it seems like going to India and Karma-rupa and Kundali, people like this really influenced your heart to see that there was more in life than maybe what met the eye and, growing up.
Yeah, and
So,
I would say only a tiny bit, because Komarupa Prabhu was very independently thoughtful, but he was also very committed to ISKCON. And so there was definitely a sense, like there was definitely a sense we didn't live near temples for the next few years. We lived in Kansas where it was more families. Indra Nugent, Saki kind of adopted us. So we didn't live, it's true. We weren't like near the big institution. It was more, but it was still, I felt very much, my identity was ISKCON for sure. It was, Prabhupada. And so thank you for that recap. And I do want to get to meeting Guru Maharaj, because I feel like that, like I said, my whole kind of life, I feel very much that I was led to him. And there's a few things that I thought of, I call them like samskaras that I remember as a child and growing up. There's just these few things that really stood out to me. So, my mother, of course, is a big book distributor. And so, and we read Lilamrita, Prabhupada Lilamrita, when I was in Gurukula. And so Guru Maharaj's name, of course, would come up and through these stories. And all these stories, I knew which of the gurus had fallen away. And so I remember asking my mother, who's this Tripurari Swami? I've never met him. And, and she said, I don't remember exactly what she said, but she said, oh, he was a big book distributor. And I said, is he not a devotee anymore? And she said, no, he is still a devotee. And, but these little things, and my mother had this, this photo album of deity pictures that I used to look at a lot when I was a child. And she had this big one of Gaura deities that were dressed really beautifully. One was wearing yellow and the other was wearing blue, and they had like switched head jewelry and necklaces. And on the bottom, she had handwritten Tripurari Gaura deities. But I used to look at that picture all the time because I just thought they were dressed so beautifully. And these just little pockets. And I also remember, I don't know how, but I just remember this. We had a basement in our preaching center in Lansing, and I remember going down there and there were some books on a bookshelf. My mother always had books that she was distributing, but there was this red book with gold writing, and I pulled it out and it said, Golden Volcano of Divine Love, B.R. Sridhar Goswami. And I don't know, it's like a picture in my mind, like this picture of, because my parents had actually when I was younger, they were in San Francisco, and they were with a devotee there who had spent some time with Srila Sridhar Maharaj. So anyway, these little pockets, but we'll fast forward to my 20s. I had children also pretty young. My first daughter was born when I was 22, and then my son was born 2 years later when I was 24. And I had always wanted to be a mother. I knew when I was younger, that was a huge aspiration for me, was being a young mother. And, it was extremely healing for me because, and that's kind of, I feel like the hero's journey is in being able to integrate the pain and make something beautiful out of it. So any painfulness and instability and difficulties that I had as a child, they provided me with what I didn't want to do. Like I had a very strong direction with how I wanted to mother, and I really wanted to give them like stability and yeah, just a lot of traditions as a family and a lot of family time. So they, they really healed me in a huge way, like being able to mother, especially my two older ones. But of course it's hard too, mothering. I had two children under 2 years old and it was really hard. And it was at that time that we moved to live near my parents, and we still do. And they, helped immensely with raising all 3 of my children. But, it was really healing, I think, for them as well, to be able to, live near us and have that. And I definitely spent like the majority of my 20s dealing with healing from the traumas of my childhood, and mothering kind of opens up your heart. And I would compare it to, it's like they give you a mirror to your heart, so you really see what's inside. And so yeah, I definitely spent a lot of my whole 20s and even early 30s like really intentionally working on the difficulties and things that were hard in my childhood. But it was right. So it was right in 2004. So my son had just turned 1 and my daughter was 3. And I wrote Kormarupa Prabhu a letter, and I told him that what I said was, I felt like everything in my life was matching up to what I wanted. Everything was figured out. I had a nice husband, I had nice kids, and my parents lived nearby. I was living in a community, and I didn't have a guru, and I want to say that I did try to have Prabhupada as my guru. I really did. I thought, this is who's my guru. Like, I can trust him. He's given me inspiration my whole life. I feel very connected to him. But I couldn't be accountable to him. He couldn't ask me if I was chanting, and it would always slide. I would, on Vyas Puja day, I would be like, okay, this is it. I'm going to, chant every day and do this and this. And there was something not missing, something that was not there. And so, yeah, I wrote Kormarupa Prabhu this letter really saying that I feel like everything has happened in my life, and I'm really feeling this need for a guru. And yeah, I believe I sent it, and I sent the letter, and it was very, very shortly after, maybe even just days, where I was at my parents' house, and my mother said, "Oh, I'm going to go up to Sandy Ridge because Archana-siddhi and Karnamrita invited us to hear from Tripurari Swami is visiting." And I remember just hearing his name, like I got just curiosity. And I had actually just recently found a sanga on the Vaishnavi webpage that he had written. And they had posted it there. And I had recently read that just within a few weeks' time, all this was happening. And I remember being very impressed with the sanga, that sanga on the Vaishnavi page about women. It was about women. But again, I didn't know anything about him except that from what I had read in the Prabhupada Lilamrita. And I should say there's one thing that I knew about him was when we lived in Kansas, Ganapati Swami was selling his Bhagavad Gita, Guru Maharaj's translation of the Bhagavad Gita. So I remember we went to one of the programs and Mudden bought one of the Gitas, and just like you said, I was like, what? Wait, why do we have another, why did he write another Gita? We don't need another Gita. And anyway, that was one little blip, and I was like, I'm not looking at that. Anyway, I can laugh now, but so yeah, I didn't know anything about him, but my mother invited me and she had a place to stay. And so just me and her and my two children, we drove up. And I can still remember walking into your house, and I opened the door and he was sitting on the chair by the altar. And he looked at me and he said, "Good evening." And I'm telling you, from that word, I was like, this person is different. I was like, he welcomed all of us. And he said that, "Good evening. Thank you so much for coming." And yeah, I don't remember the class, but I remember him saying
good evening.
But it impacted me so much because, again, it was personalism, it was authentic, it was real. But I do remember that the class was also completely blew me away. Like I felt this like literal electricity in my body and my heart. And so we stayed for at least 1 or 2 nights, and we went to the morning class. He had a 10 o'clock class and an evening class. And we drove home, and I told Mudden, I said, "You have to meet him." I said, I was like, you have to go up and meet him. Like, his classes are so different. Like he knows the philosophy. He expresses it in such a way that like you can understand it. So the next day, he was in school at the time, Mudden. So the next day, my mother watched our 2 children, and just the 2 of us drove up just for the class. And this is about an hour and a half's drive from where we were living at the time. And so we went up for the class, and he invited us after the class to come in to meet him into his room. So the 2 of us went in, and Mudden talked for quite a while just about his struggles with ISKCON and his guru at the time. And you know, I'm thinking like this whole time, like this is my guru. Like I just wrote this letter to Kumarupa. Like I have this need. Like it hit me so strongly. And you know, it might not even have been that articulate, but I was so drawn to him. And so we talked for quite a while, at least an hour or maybe even more. And you know, I was shy, so I didn't really say much. So we paid obeisances to leave. And as we were getting up to leave, he looked at me and he said, "And what's your story?" or something. Yeah, like something like that. "And who are you initiated by?" That's what he asked also. "Who are you initiated by?" And I told him I'm not initiated. And, you know, and I told him just a little bit about myself. But, you know, I really feel grateful. I feel like Krishna kind of saved me for Guru Maharaj. I feel really grateful about that because, you know, like I said, it was such a head search for me, finding a guru. And it was, you know, something that I wanted to do. And then, you know, it kind of fell off the track. But then when I really needed it, when I really felt that, you know, I must have a guru. Have a guru. Like something is missing in my life. You know, I really felt that something is missing. And then it was, yeah, so almost instantaneous that Guru Maharaj was presented in my life. So
yeah, well, thank you for sharing that. That really took me back to that time.
yeah,
It was really magical, that whole visit with him. And I so much remember you coming and having that darshan with him. And it was really, those were really special days when we had him coming.
It was
there.
really special. And it felt like, again, I had read Prabhupada's books. I had been listening to lectures my whole life. I knew that the philosophy said that you had to accept a guru. And I also knew that Prabhupada described it. He described it like electrical current connecting, getting your, connection to the parampara. And it was like these little like dominoes, like all this clicking in my head, like, oh, this is what it feels like to be connected. This is the electrical current. I feel it. I know that this is it. Like, this is the connection that I've been hearing about for so long. And it's all in the heart, not in the head. It's like a total heart. And it was just, like everything just, it was this whole clicking. And so, then some, a real messiness started. Because, then it was the reality that this is who Krishna has guided me to. And I immediately we started getting CDs. They would send, started getting on the calls. At that time, it was like an evening weekday that we would do the calls. And we started getting on that. And we started getting the CDs. And I listened to those CDs all the time. I remember driving and my kids falling asleep, we were in the parking lot of the grocery store, and I would just sit while they slept so that I could hear the CDs. And it was like this, it was the effect was so palpable, the difference of having like that connection with a real living sadhu. And I also started reading the Bhagavad Gita. I knew that, I really wanted to read the Bhagavad Gita. And so, I remember 2005, which was actually 2005 was like in my personal and growth of my life was a very difficult year for me. I was dealing with a lot of issues that were coming up for me from my childhood. And so it was a real shelter. But I started reading the Bhagavad Gita, and it's kind of embarrassing to say it now, but the leap was so hard for me. And I don't know if people that may, it's hard to understand, but it was, ISKCON was everything to me. It was my history, it was my family, it was my friends, it was my education, it was this network. I mean, ISKCON when I was growing up was big, but it was so small compared to now. In one example is that my mother had a brother who was a sailor, so he would go do work on ships, and we moved again all the time. So he would call the Brooklyn temple where she joined. If he ever wanted to figure out where we had moved to, he would call the Brooklyn temple, and they would know where we were, because that's how it was. Like, my parents were pretty well known, and they would give him the next temple that we were living at. And so, it was everything to me. And I, again, had not had experience materially outside of ISKCON. I didn't have any footing in that world. And so, it was really hard. And I want to say also that, so there's two things I want to say. So we visited Odarya in 2006 of Gur Purnim. It was March, and it was very austere. It was very cold at that time. And it was Guru Maharaj in his ashram. You know, before that he had come to North Carolina, and you know, he was adapting to the environment that your house and, you know, mostly ISKCON devotees. And so he was, you know, he was adapting somewhat, but this was him and his ashram. And it was very clear that there was a distinction between ISKCON and his ashram and his, you know, group. And that was really hard for me. I had this hope for many years that somehow I was gonna be this bridge that was gonna bring him back into ISKCON. And, you know, it was really hard for me, the differences in the morning program and the differences of style. And yeah, it was painful. It was a painful time. And one important thing is that, which is a beautiful thing, is Guru Maharaj, he really takes people for where they're at. And I've never met anybody who doesn't see the externals. He really sees your heart, your internal like attitude. And so he levels the playing field. You know, there's no extra kind of, not benefits, but there's no extra benefits from, you know, being born as a devotee or being a disciple of, you know, Srila Prabhupada, or it was very much like you do the work and then you get the benefit from that work, but it is work and it's internal. And, you know, and that was hard. It was, you know, here I am, somebody who's grown up as a devotee, been chanting, and it felt like I was a new devotee. It felt like I was this bhakti, this new, you know, I didn't know the prayers. I didn't know the way the morning program went. I didn't know, you know, it's like Amal Sham said yesterday, he wasn't qualified, or not yesterday, last week, he wasn't qualified to sweep the floor. Like, it felt like that, like I'm the new person here. I don't like, I felt like I don't belong here yet. Like this isn't so yeah, it was beautiful, and it was trying, but he gave a Vyasa Puja lecture, and I believe it was the 4th verse of the Guru Vastakam, which I'm so excited. I saw Guru Nishta is making that into a book. So it was the 4th verse that year. And again, I just remember sitting in that lecture and being just completely captured. And I remember I asked some question at the end, something related again to gurus falling down, kind of this hesitancy, like, well, you know, you're talking all about the guru, and what about people that are have gurus or gurus do fall down, you know? And I don't remember exactly what he said, but it was a little bit like, you're here with me now. It's, you know, like don't worry. And it was just a really, really powerful visit, and, you know, and trying as well. And on our last day there, they got a new cow named Suki. Guru Maharaj named her Suki, which means happiness. And she really did not want to be there. They had to drag her off of the trailer and pulling her, and then she was jumping and running, and it was so like the parallels to me were so obvious. And Guru Maharaj was just patient, and he was laughing, and he really liked this cow, Suki. He really liked her. But I remember just looking at her thinking, same, honey, same. I feel you. I feel you. And finally they got her in the pen, but she was not happy, and she was just running and bucking. But anyway, she kind of became my like patron cow. I had a picture of her on my because I was a little bit like that, like dragon. But finally, finally Guru Maharaj, well, he was ready to initiate me earlier, and I had put my like a self-imposed restriction that I really wanted to finish the Gita before I was initiated. I wanted to finish reading the his Bhagavad Gita. And so I told him that, and and he said something to the effect like, that's good, but also initiation, like the advancement that you'll make from making that formal connection is important. So I believe I did finish the Bhagavad Gita because that verse, the verse at the end, Sarva Dharmam Parityaja, was kind of, I clung to that verse, and the purport to that verse was very powerful, because I really was leaving a lot behind. And so we had an initiation at someone's house. It was hosted in their yard because of course we weren't allowed to have it at the temple, which I was very much a part of at the time. But Guru Maharaj gave a really beautiful lecture, and he glorified, there was quite a few, ISKCON devotees that had grown up in ISKCON that were there. My parents and Mahara and Agni Dev was there, and Mitra Sen and U-Boat, Archana and Karnam. And he really glorified them and made it a really community event. And a lot of devotees came to support me, many who would not have normally come to hear from him, and who never came again either, except for that one initiation. But also many devotees didn't come, and I really feel like after the initiation was where my real trial by fire came, and the real messiness came, because Guru Maharaj is kind of the guru of gray thinking.
Right.
But I was still trying to take my black and white thinking and fit it into the box of his sanga. So I even though he never told me that, that when he left after I got initiated, that when he left and went back to Odarya, he told me, so do service at the temple as they're willing to let you, and be a good example because you're reflecting me now. So that's what he told me. And so I took that to heart, and I did service at the temple. I started cooking evening offerings, but I had such a black and white thinking. I had this, in some ways, maybe I needed it to have a little bit more distance, but I wanted, it was almost like I was trying to replace my experience in ISKCON with Sri Chaitanya Sangha. Like, okay, well, I'm giving this up. So now what am I getting from that? And, and there, it's like, any spiritual group, any institution, there was fanatical devotees in there. There was impersonalism, there was inauthenticity. And that was really hard for me. You know, I felt like I'm wanting to belong. I want to be part of a community. I want to be, have a guru and have that experience of God's siblings. It was really important to me. And, you know, and at the time it was just very small. We had, you know, very little, even here in North Carolina, and Odaria was a monastic place, so I just didn't fit in there. And so there was a lot of I just had a lot of fear. I had a lot of shedding to do, a lot of cultural distinctions. You know, I had fear that my children were going to be ostracized. I had fear, and I had really difficult experiences with spiritual prejudice. You know, our local guru giving lectures talking about, you know, the distinction between ISKCON and other groups. And even at one point, there was a sannyasi that was specifically asked to come to our area to speak about, you know, how Srila Sridhar Maharaj is not to be listened to, like specifically to preach against him. And you know, and I did lose friends. I lost well-wishers, people that I had known my whole life growing up, that I lost. And, you know, there was definitely times where I felt, just alone, and kind of that fear. It was one of, it was really one of the most like scary things that I had done. Like I know it, I don't know.
No, I'm totally with you on it.
It was like this total unknown of what, but you know, Guru Maharaj used to always say how, and I remember him saying it a lot in those early lectures at your house, but he would always say how we all have our flute song that we have to listen to, and that, you know, you just have to go. And then when you get there, you find, oh, you heard it also, you know, and you heard it also, and then you find your group, you know, so
Yeah.
you find your people, he used to say, like, you know, your people. And so, I think I really clung to that. And I always trusted him, you know, not that it was always easy. I definitely had, times where my ego was way egotistical. And I thought I knew better than him, and I was very bold and with communicating with me. And he, you know, he still is, but he was, especially in those days, he was just so kind and so affectionate. And even one time in particular where he was very heavy with me, he sent me an email that was really intense, putting me in my place. But, you know, he would always, and then after a few hours later, he checked in on me. You're probably feeling a little bit intense, but, you know, it was, and sometimes I did have to step back. Like he says, you know, sometimes you're too close to the fire, and sometimes you have to pull back a little bit. So I did have like a year or two where, you know, doubts and kind of that feeling of, you know, belonging. And again, it really comes down to that his teachings and his group is so based on spiritual essence. It's not based on the externals. It's like, again, you have to hear that song, that flute song, and then find your group. But we want to do, at least me, I think most people, but I wanted to do it the other way. I wanted to find my group and then go together. You know, but you can't always have that. So anyway, it's been a journey, and, you know, things steadily, our sanga grew. In 2008 was the Gaur Vijay Mandir opening, which was a really beautiful festival to be at. And I remember we took a group picture, and it felt like I belong to this group. And then we went in 2011, a whole bunch of us from North Carolina went for Janmashtami to Odaria, and that was really sweet. And then of course, Saragrahi really rallied us together. I feel like it was a huge benefit to me personally and our family. And it for the time that it was there, it was a huge benefit for sure. Yeah, it was just an immense blessing for us. Yeah, and then just learning patience, because now, now over the years, so many good friends of mine have come under Guru Maharaj's shelter. And, and I found so many people even that Krishna brought that, were part of my childhood, like you and Mahar and Mitra and Bhakti Rasa, I knew from Dallas when I was just like 13 years old. And yeah, so all these devotees that, that Krishna brought to. And Sumati I knew. Sumati was at our wedding in Denver. I knew her when I was in Denver. And so, yeah, it's really sweet to find your group. And I really look forward to meeting more of the wonderful devotees that are here. And I just want to end with saying that, my messiness now is like, seeing all the gifts that I've been given, and so much, so much of a foundation that I have. And then, Guru Maharaj's guidance. And, so the messiness for me now is like, okay, well, what am I like? I have to, make this, I have to keep, there's no end to spiritual life. You're always new, you're always progressing, you're always stripping away those layers. And, this October will be 2 years since I've seen Guru Maharaj, and that's the longest that I've ever, since 2004, that I've ever gone without having him. And so I realized these last 2 years how much I was relying on that, like, the 2 inches grace and effort. Well, I was relying on too much grace and not enough effort, because it's just magic when he's around. It's the grace is flowing and there's no effort. So yeah, just the realization that, it does take effort, it does take commitment, getting to a place of steadiness. And it takes that commitment. It takes, I can't just rely on the grace, even though I love being around devotees, and I love being around when we have our programs and our festivals, then, it is so nourishing for me. And I do need devotee association desperately. I realized that as well the past 2 years, that I'm not very as strong as I thought I was.
And it's amazing that in the last 2 years, how much the sanga has gone all over the world. I mean, it's
yes.
Seeming effortlessly, but it's, of course, there's been everything that Guru Maharaj has been doing for the last, 50 years of his life, really planting seeds and writing his books, and, all his talks that are out there. And then, to have attracted devotees like Padmanabha Swami, who, and so it's really, to me, it's like, wow, I never expected, like when Saragrahi kind of didn't work out, but to see so much more has worked out in a way we wouldn't have expected, or so it's like, being patient with Krishna's plan. That's what
totally being patient and realizing that being part of the Chaitanya tree, the branches are going to grow in their own way, and yeah, it has been really sweet to see, and that sense of like I saw the pictures from the Finland
Okay. Yeah.
retreat. They had a retreat there with Padmanabha Swami, and it's just that sense of like, oh, I have a family there, and
I've got
I want to go.
family.
I want to plan on going next time, and yeah, it's very
Yeah.
it's sweet, and I think some people need that more than others, and I'm someone who kind of does, even though I do, I feel small is beautiful. There's so much that can be in small, but it is very, very sweet to see how many people have been influenced and attracted by Guru Maharaj. Just, for me to have seen over the last years to kind of be part of watching that growth.
Well, I'm just so happy that Krishna made you part of this group, because I mean, I remember meeting you probably, I don't know, maybe you were 16, 15, no, probably even younger than that.
Yeah, because you used to bring Ryan or Nitai Gauranga to school.
Yeah, well, he was staying
in
there
North
for a
Carolina.
while at the ashram, and you were
Yeah.
there.
Oh, yeah. Because I used to visit my brother. My brother went to Baltimore too.
Yeah, but it was actually, I think the first time I met you was at Irmala's school.
Yeah.
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 And then, yeah. So anyway, I just was so impressed with you. You were so mature and so good with adults. Like I remember having a real conversation with you. Most of the kids, you didn't have that kind of connection. They were still very kids, they would, okay, say hello to you, but not want to stop and actually sit down and talk to you. You're an adult.
I had a lot of adult friends, I think, living in a preaching center, and there were kids that came, but somehow I had a lot of adult.
You were very mature, and I remember having some really sweet conversations with you, and it was like, wow, I really love this girl.
Aww,
I wish she was a little younger, because I would think about her as a possibility for my son.
Right, that's what everybody thought.
That was it. She was you were the star, Guru Cooley out there. So we just I mean, I know we've gone kind of long, but I just wanted to see if we have anybody who has a burning question that you would like to ask. So if you do, unmute yourself. See, Sakirati just came on and she unmuted, so
yes,
go for it.
Yeah, thank you so much for the interview. It was very inspiring, and definitely you have a family over here.
Oh, thank you.
You can come anytime.
Thank you. I know. Thank you.
Yeah. And I have a question regarding the fact that you say that you were raised as to be a wife, right? So what do you feel about it? Because I honestly disagree with that kind of teaching, because I feel like they brought here the Indian culture, but without filters, and they just throw it there. So how you felt also about it?
So how I feel now, or how I felt?
Both.
Okay, so how I felt about it was, I mean, I was raised that way, so it was normal, and all my friends also were getting married young, and we didn't talk to boys like at all. Like, yeah, it was very I mean, I didn't really have friends that were men, or so it was just part of the natural progression that my next stage will be. And for me personally, that's why it was really important that I had someone that I could be really good friends with, because I wanted I wanted that relationship to be also someone that I could grow with. And and then definitely, like, over the years, I struggled with how young I was, and how just not doing, maybe, just not doing things that I might have wanted to do. Even like living in an ashram. I would have loved to live in an ashram, actually. That was kind of one of my aspirations. And I went back to I went to school, to college, when I was 34. So I had no higher education. I finished high school. So that was a little bit tough. I started school when I was pregnant with my third child, and I completed my nursing school education with 3 children. So that was something that was tough, and that, might have been nicer to do when I was young. But I really, at this point, like how I feel now at this point in my life, I don't have any like regrets or like anger towards my, mother for kind of guiding this way that my life went. For her, that seemed like the best way to grow and to have, have a partner when you're young. And so we raised our children differently. My daughter's going to be 20 in October, and we are driving her to Boston, which is a 12.5-hour drive from where we live. So she's going to be about 6 states away from us, living in a dorm and going to a liberal arts college. So a very, very different experience of early life than I had. And that was just kind of the way it went. It wasn't so much like a conscious, maybe not so much a conscious decision of, but, kind of seeing where she was led and what she wanted to do. And she knew that she wanted to, go to college. And it's a different generation for sure. So, but thank you. Yeah, it has its pros and cons for sure. But for me, it did work out. And
I just wanted to just interject one little thing that might be important to note, was that Gaurangi Priya didn't have the pressure to be in a traditional kind of Vedic situation where she was the submissive wife, and that she only, that she couldn't go to school, or she
right.
couldn't, she and Madan have a very equal kind of relationship, and they are like best friends. So I think that makes a tremendous difference. And your parents also have that kind of, more like that kind of relationship. And so I think part of the discomfort that I have with it is, when you put girls into situations where they can't be who they have to just come under the shelter of a man and not have their own way of thinking or doing and developing the way that they need to.
Yeah, that's a really good point. And actually, Madan was always, super supportive and not just supportive, but helpful in, whatever I wanted to do. Actually, the only other thing, I knew I wanted to be a mother, and the other thing is I wanted to be a dancer. I had studied Bharatanatyam dance when I was younger. And so when I was 19 or so, 19 or 20, I said that I wanted to formally take lessons and graduate. You have like a program, and then you graduate with it's called an Arangetram, where you have a solo debut performance. So we just went across the country looking for a teacher, and then I found one, and we just settled there. And he was always really supportive of that. And then he didn't go to school either. He started school when he was 28. He had joined the temple young as well. So we both kind of did different route of education. So yeah, and I supported him when he was going, and then I went as well. So yeah, I think it could have gone a different way for sure.
So thank you so much. And it's now 1 o'clock, so I think we.
Okay, sorry.
No, don't be sorry. It was wonderful. And there is a comment from Annapurna. Maybe Martin, you could read that, and then we can finish on that. Yeah. Okay.
Well, my mother was very inspired, and she also listened for many years. And they both are supportive of me. Yeah. So that's their story to tell, but they, yeah, they're definitely supportive of Guru Maharaj, and yeah, they both were there at my initiation and supported it.
Okay, so I'm gonna wrap this up, and thank you again. And there's that beautiful husband of yours in the background there. And I just want to say that next week we have another finishing of a couple, because we had Sakirati last month, and then this month to finish our month, we're going to have Shamananda. So we're really looking forward to getting, now we've got couples that we can start putting together. So we look forward to that interview next week. And thank you both for being part of the sanga. I just, I have so much affection for both of you, and so glad that you're with us.
Thank you, Archana. Because of you.
But Karnamrita, we'll give him all the credit.
Karnamrita, because of Karnam for sure. Yeah.
He dragged me into it. I went kicking and screaming like Suki. Okay, dear devotees, Hare Krishna, Hare Bol.